to the Victorian Child Safe Standards Training run by Kaizen Synergy Law Firm. My name is Nihal, Samara. I'm the General Counsel and Legal Director here at Kaizen Synergy Law Firm, and I welcome you to the Victorian Child Safe Standards Training. This training is designed for community service organisations and their staff personnel. As always, we'd like to pay our respects to the traditional upon which we all meet. While this session is being run by webinar and recorded, we do pay our respects to the traditional owners accordingly. Now, before we start the training, I would just like to cover off the supports that are available. If you do have any questions regarding this training, then you can talk to your agency executive leadership team, or you can reach out directly to our law firm by using our 1300 360 360 number, our email support as well too, or you can go to our chat support at gemba360.com because your agency is using the Gemba 360 Legal Compliance Dashboard. There are also a number of other external services that you may also refer to in terms of the child safe standards and also reporting obligations that your agency has. In this presentation, we're going to cover off three main areas. Firstly, we're going to cover off an overview of the child safe standards. We're going to look at the overview of each of the child safe standards and what the possible consequences of non-compliance are. And we're also going to look at your agency's child safe policies, procedures, and also responsibilities. And these will be actually summarized down for you so that you're aware of what each of these requirements are under the child safe standards and how it applies to you in your role. So let's have a look at the overview of the child safe standards. Now, child safety includes matters related to the protection of all children from child abuse, managing the risk of child abuse, providing support to a child at risk of child abuse, and responding to suspicions, incidents, disclosures, or allegations of child abuse as well too. Now, we would also like to take this opportunity to thank the department and also Prompt for actually providing some of these slides that we are using. And as part of this, we have also added to some of the legal compliance obligations that is relevant specifically for your agency. So we do provide that acknowledgement as well. Now, child abuse includes any act committed against a child involving a sexual offence or grooming, the infliction on a child of physical violence, serious emotional or psychological harm, or the serious neglect of a child. And that is important to be aware of how broad child abuse actually is defined as. Now, the Child Safe Standards has a fairly long history to get to where we are. Essentially, there was the Betrayal of Trust inquiry back in 2012. There was then the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Abuse. There was then the original Child Safe Standards, which was implemented in Victoria in 2016. And then in 2019, Victoria agreed to adopt the National Child Safe Standards. And also then in the 1st of July 2021, Victoria adopted the new Child Safe Standards aligned with the national principles. What we are seeing now is the new Child Safe Standards, which commenced in July 2022. So why are the Child Safe Standards so important? This is actually a really important question to actually ask. The Child Safe Standards recognise that all children are vulnerable. The Child Safe Standards require community service organisations like yours to take steps to prevent child abuse and build a culture of child safety. We are going to look at what this actually means and how this is done within your agency. Now, it's also important to be aware that community service organisations cannot simply assume that child abuse does not happen and cannot happen within their agency or agency's community as well. So why are the Child Safe Standards so important when you look at what are the Child Safe Standards aim? Well, their aim is to promote the safety of children, prevent child abuse, ensure effective processes are in place to respond to and report all allegations of child abuse. And this is done by actually driving changes in culture and providing a minimum standard of child safety. We will actually cover off how this is done within your agency through things like policies and procedures and processes, and also incident reporting as well too, to manage this and prevent repetitive issues occurring as well too. So what's the big difference here? Well, in 2022, the new child safe standards were introduced. The new requirement is to keep children and children safe, specifically for families and children in safety efforts, as well as community service organisations focused on safety for Aboriginal children, and also better management of the risk of abuse, of child abuse online as well too. And how this is actually done can be seen right across your policy documents within your agency. Now, there are 11 different standards that your agency does need to meet. And how the training is actually divided up is to ensure that different personnel in different parts of your agency cover off different standards as well too. So we do have other training for volunteers, and we do have other training for board members as well. So let's have a look at an overview of each of the child safe standards. So Child Safe Standard 1 covers cultural safety. And the aim of this is to ensure that community service organisations must establish a cultural safe environment in which the diverse and unique identities and experiences of Aboriginal children, young people and children are respected and valued. Child Safe Standard 2 covers the safety and well-being in leadership and governance and culture. And this is important to ensure that your community organisation actually ensures that its governance and culture has the processes in place to ensure child safety. And we'll show you how that's done through some of the policies a bit further on. The other part that the child safe standards also include is child empowerment. Community service organisations must ensure that children, young people and children are empowered about their rights, participate in decisions affecting them, and are taken seriously. Child Safe Standard 4 ensures that families and communities are informed and involved in promoting child safety and well-being. Now, all of these standards are actually covered within specific policy documents, but the idea here is that each of these standards meets a specific requirement that your community service organisation can ensure that it does meet and can demonstrate how this is done. And this is particularly important where there is assessment of suitable staff and volunteers, and also ensuring that people working with children and young people are suitable and supported to reflect child safety and well-being values in practice. And so some of those will include not just policies and procedures, but also undertaking things like police checks and working with children checks as well too, which is mandatory in terms of providing services to children. There's also a complaints process. And again, the complaints process is covered off as part of the standards, but that can also be ensuring that processes for complaints and concerns are child-focused. So it's not just about making a complaint, it is about also addressing how these complaints are managed and that there are well-communicated policies and procedures for concerns and allegations. There's also the requirement for child safety knowledge and skills awareness. And essentially, there is tailored training delivered to all staff, and this is included as part of this session that you are attending. And this will ensure that everyone will share an understanding of what child safety means, the importance of child safety, what to look for, and also what to do if you do identify a possible risk as well. And there is the requirement for child safety in the physical and online environments. And let's have a look in terms of what is being identified here. Well, we are moving away from just the physical environment, and we have to be mindful now of the online environment. For some community service organisations, the online environment may be slightly different in terms of how that is also managed, but it might be also about reporting and understanding that if an issue is brought by a child in terms of safety within an online environment, you know what to do and how to manage this as well too. Child Safe Standard 10 talks about review of child safety practices. And this means that community service organisations must ensure that implementation of the child safe standards is regularly reviewed and improved. And this ensures that not only about policies and procedures, but also looking at your open and transparent culture. Child Safe Standard 11 talks about implementation of the child safe practices. And so with this, what your organization is doing is essentially demonstrating that it meets this requirement by having different training. So we've got this training for staff, we've got other training for governance and executive managers as well, and we've also got volunteer training. There's also policies and procedures, and there's also incident and complaints reporting processes as well too within your agency. Now, let's be quite clear that around the possible consequences of not complying with the child safe standards. Well, clearly, if you don't comply with this, then there is a greater risk of child abuse. There is also the possibility of having an unsafe agency culture. Also, meeting the requirements for non-compliance identified during an agency review. Your agency could also have regulatory action by government departments. There's also investigations by commissions for children and young people as well too. But there's also legal breaches, which can include breach of duty of care by your agency, failure to stop and report offences, and also legal actions in negligence and loss of reputation as well too. So the possible consequences for not complying with the child safe standards is significant. Now, how your agency meets these requirements is around the policies and procedures and also through staff responsibilities as well. Your agency has a number of policies covering child safety and wellbeing policy, the Child Safety Risk Register, which we'll show you, the Child Safety Code of Conduct, and child safety responding and reporting obligations through your policies and procedures. Now, these policies are based on department documents as well too. So we have taken guidance from the relevant department in terms of what your agency does need to meet, and these are updated and reviewed from time to time. Now, the Child Safety and Wellbeing Policy demonstrates your commitment to providing environments where children are safe and feel safe, and that's important, that it's not just about being safe, it's also feeling safe. They are able to talk about strategies and governance arrangements to keep children safe, and also creates a shared commitment to keeping children safe within your agency as well too. And this document is available. What does your policy say about your agency's commitment to child safety? Well, essentially, the overarching statement is that you are a child safe organisation which welcomes all children, young people and their families, and are committed to providing environments where children are safe and feel safe and their voices are heard. There's also no tolerance for child abuse and take proactive steps to identify and manage risks of harm. There is also an established culture and environment to responding to diverse needs as well too. Particularly attention needs to be given to children with disability, children from a cultural and linguistic diverse backgrounds, and children that may be unable to live at home, international children, or lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, diverse, intersex, or queer children, and Aboriginal children as well too. There is also the Child Safety Code of Conduct. Now, this Code of Conduct has and is built upon the department's Code of Conduct as well too. And who has to follow it? Well, it's essentially everyone. So staff, volunteers, contractors, and other members of your agency, including board members as well too, has to follow the General Code of Conduct. There is also acceptable and unacceptable behaviour. And essentially, acceptable behaviour is about upholding the commitment to child safety and treating children and families in your agency with respect. This means listening and responding to views and concerns of children and promoting cultural safety where relevant as well. There's also the need to actually report allegations of child abuse or other child safety concerns, and that can be done via the Gemba 360 incident reporting form as well. Now, the Child Safety Risk Register is managed, as I mentioned, on the Gemba 360 Risk Register and your incident reporting form. Now, you can essentially find this by going onto your Gemba dashboard, and this is just the demo version that we have in front of you. Quite simply, to lodge an incident or a hazard, you can go into the risk management and click on this button and report an incident as well. You may also find this same form located on the tools bar on the left-hand side of your dashboard. The Organisational Risk Register, which you can see in the middle of your screen, covers the organizational wide risk identification and how your agency manages this. Now, if you do have any questions, as I mentioned right at the start, there is a chat bar that you can use, and that's located on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And you will find this on your Gemba 360 dashboard as well too. There is also a complaints policy, and your agency's complaints policy provides an online agency requirement to actually report complaints by any children or other agency staff or personnel as well too. The idea here is that it sets an expectation that all complaints and concerns are managed in a timely, effective, and fair and respectful manner. Complaints and concerns relating to child abuse will be managed in accordance with your child safety responding obligations under your policy and procedures. And you can find all of these policies and procedures within your Gemba Docs part of your Gemba system as well. It's important that you must not ignore or disregard any concerns, suspicions, or disclosures of child abuse or harm. Now, responding to incidents, disclosures, and suspicions of child abuse, there are 4 critical actions for community services. These include responding to the emergency, reporting to authority, contacting parents, and providing support. And again, your policy has specific requirements on what your individual role will be as well too. No one person will be responsible for all of these, but essentially your agency has an escalation process in place to ensure that these 4 critical actions for community service organisations are in fact met. The staff e-learning module on protecting children, well, this is where you are located at the moment. The training is available on the Gemba 360 Legal Compliance Dashboard, and these training sessions are updated from time to time as the standards change as well. Agency staff who are mandatory reporters must complete the module once per calendar year, and non-mandatory reporters are encouraged to complete this as well too. Generally, the information provided in here is designed to ensure that you meet all of your legal compliance obligations. It's important just to, as part of this, to look at the signs of child abuse that you may need to look out for. Now, children and young people can be harmed by other children, children or adults as well. Child abuse can include physical abuse, sexual abuse, grooming, serious emotional or psychological harm, neglect, or even family violence as well. It doesn't have to involve physical contact or force, and child abuse can include talking to a child in a sexually explicit way, grooming a child for future sexual activity, experiencing family violence, or failing to provide a child with adequate standard of essentially nutrition, supervision, or medical care. There is information sharing obligations for staff, and this is covered within your policy document around privacy and information sharing. There are occasions where the agency may be lawfully share information with outside parties. For example, that could include DFFH, Child Protection, Victoria Police, or child information sharing schemes as well too. And there is a whole policy on this particular requirement that you can have access to and refer to should you require further information. There is also the record keeping obligations for community service organisations that your agency would already do. And good record practices are a critical element of child safety. We do also have another training session around the SOAP format and why keeping records is important. This is a little bit broader than the child safety obligations, but it is there if you want to have a look at keeping good records and how to meet these requirements as well. There is also the empowering of children and families to express their views and raise concerns. And there are agency policies and agency practices that your agency has, which is provided under different ways, specifically focused on things like surveys, focus groups, discussions to review accessibility, which is done within different program areas, and also the ability to report on outcomes of relevant reviews to staff and volunteers and the community as well. Things to remember. Well, agency staff have a responsibility to always follow your agency's child safety and wellbeing policies, act in accordance with your child safety code of conduct, and identify and raise concerns about child abuse as well too. It's important that you ensure children's views are taken seriously and their voices are heard about decisions affecting their lives. It's also important that you implement inclusive practices and respond to diverse needs, as well as ensuring that you participate in child safety and wellbeing induction training. If you do have any questions, we direct you to the child safety wellbeing team as well too, and also Karen Digby, the Manager of Quality and Compliance at your agency. If you do have any further questions, you can also reach out to our law firm. Thank you again for attending this training, and bye for now.